I've been covering the so-called migrant crisis story quite a lot, and it is very striking that, of course, in the whole debate about immigration, we still struggle so hard in this country and in other parts of Europe with talking about what we actually mean. Do we mean economic migration? Do we mean asylum? Do we mean people who want a better life and deserve a better life, and can we give it to them, and all these sort of things? Is that really, this is the area we're still struggling in. And the question of that being immigration doesn't do justice to it, and whether Britain is full certainly doesn't do justice to this, which is a much bigger issue, and I think, by the way, now a much bigger issue than any one government.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. Hope you are feeling good. Today we'll be checking out a debate where Douglas Murray is one of the speakers, titled "Is Britain Full?" Wow, I believe this is going to be an interesting one. So let's check it out. Go.
Okay, so is Britain full? Let me give you the kind of quote that you hear quite a lot these days. What great states of the world other than Great Britain permit the immigration of destitute aliens without restriction? Should Her Majesty's government be prevented by any treaty obligations from making such regulations as shall put a stop to the free importation of destitute aliens into the United Kingdom? Those words are spoken by one Captain Colomb. He was the Conservative MP for Tower Hamlets in 1887. So what we're discussing now, plus you change. Douglas Murray, let me start with you. I'm going to ask you all to set out your stall, if you were, in a couple of minutes. So the notion, do you think Britain's full?
No, it's not. I have to say, this is the most irritating thing for any panellist to do, I know, but let me just quibble with the framing of that, of this. Whether Britain is full or not is a sort of, I think, in a way, an unhelpful way to look at this. There is obviously space in the country. There are obviously all sorts of parts of the country you could build more houses on, and so on. And this is the same with all European countries. I think that, as it were, but of course that's not really what we mean when we talk about it. What we mean is, do people feel in the country that it is a country that can't take in any more people, or shouldn't be taking them in at this rate, and so on. My own view on this is that, and as I say, I'm assuming, because this is a Guardian event, that most of you are good Guardian readers and good left-wingers.
We're not all good.
Left-wingers,
I met
maybe.
a bad left-winger earlier. So let me put it to you this way. This seems to me to be a very, very big challenge for the left. Not that the right hasn't had its own tergiversations on this in recent decades, but that on the left this is a big problem, because broadly speaking, one can't get around the fact that, as Hugh said at the outset, public opinion consistently, actually, in recent years, has said that the public want less immigration than they currently have. A recent poll earlier this year showed a mere 7% of the British population wanting an increase in immigration. Then we have this, of course, problem, is that although that is public opinion, as I say, fairly consistently held, nevertheless, the parties, the main parties, struggle with this question still. They struggle in part, I would suggest, because of the problem of language in the area and what they promise, and what sounds tough, as opposed to what they can actually achieve, what can actually be done. And there's no better demonstration of that than the current government, which, of course, promised a few years ago to bring immigration down from the hundreds of thousands a year to tens of thousands, and of course has magnificently, obviously, not managed to do that. So I think there is a serious problem here. What happens not just when public opinion wants something and politicians keep on struggling with what to do and how to frame it, but also clearly politicians seem to be failing to actually do anything that responds to public opinion. And this, as I say, is a very large problem, and one which, if I may just make one other additional observation, one which is going to increase as a problem in the coming years, I think. I've been covering the so-called migrant crisis story quite a lot, and it is very striking that, of course, in the whole debate about immigration, we still struggle so hard in this country and other parts of Europe with talking about what we actually mean. Do we mean economic migration? Do we mean asylum? Do we mean people who want a better life and deserve a better life, and can we give it to them, and all these sort of things? Is that really, this is the area we're still struggling in. And the question of that being immigration doesn't do justice to it, and whether Britain is full certainly doesn't do justice to this, which is a much bigger issue, and I think, by the way, now a much bigger issue than any one government.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that. We can maybe start again and reframe the question or completely.
Sorry about that.
No, don't worry, you're allowed. This is The Guardian, free speech, comment is free. Tulip Siddiq.
I'll start off by saying I'm the daughter of a political asylum seeker. So my mother came here in the 1970s from Bangladesh because 19 members of her family had been killed in Bangladesh. And she moved here because it was simply too unsafe for her to go to Bangladesh, back to Bangladesh. She didn't move here because she's looking for a job. So immigration isn't simply an economic phenomenon. She moved to Hampstead and Kilburn, which is the area I represent, where 46% of my constituency is not British born. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this is because Hugh is right to say that 46% of the people who were surveyed before the election said immigration was their number one concern. Out of those people who responded, about 80% said they thought people came to this country looking for employment, and that's the main reason they moved here. If you look at Hampstead and Kilburn, which is the area I obviously know best, the Irish people who came to Kilburn, a lot of them, not every single one, but a lot of them did come because of employment for economic reasons. The Jewish community, which is very large in my constituency, came because they were fleeing political persecution from Nazi Germany back in the day. And that's the point I want to make. There is a perception of why people come into this country, and we do need to think about addressing that, not necessarily challenging it, but thinking about it and addressing it. And I think what we need to do as a Labour Party and other mainstream parties is not try to outdo UKIP on immigration. The problem is, for years and years, politicians, especially Labour politicians, didn't talk about immigration, and that allowed UKIP to set the terms of the debate. And I think that's very damaging for a country like ours, which has always been seen as a safe haven for a lot of people trying to come into the country to escape the world in which they can't go back. So I think we do need to talk about immigration. I think we need to dispel some of the myths. We need to talk about why people come into this country. I also think if we talk about Britain being full, let's think carefully. A UN report said Britain was the 140th most crowded country in the world. That's not at the top. And are we talking about London or are we talking about Britain? Yes, there is a problem with London. There is a lot of crowding in London. Part of that is because of the housing crisis. And the other thing is, we cannot blame the overstretching of public services on immigration. That's giving the government a free ride. So let's not do that.
Thank you, Julep. Sarah.
Hi. I feel like I need to say something about my background just because you and Julep have done the same. And I'd love to hear about Douglas's later on. But I'm the daughter of two immigrants who came here separately. My father came to Cambridge University in the 60s, and my mother came with her family to go to school, but her father had a job here. And I like to talk about my own journey being one of social mobility, because my parents started out my mother started out with 7 kids in a 2-bedroom in East London. They moved to Croydon, which from East London to Croydon is apparently going up in the world. And then I moved from Croydon to Clapham, which is, again, apparently going up in the world. But the whole way through my life, my parents talked about something which I think is sometimes lost in this conversation about whether Britain is full or not, but the buzzword through my life was I grew up in Croydon in a time when actually I was the minority. I go back to Croydon now and everyone's Tamil, which is my background. But when I was growing up, I was one of 3 ethnic minority kids in my school. And my parents never wanted me to feel that. They made it very clear that I was Tamil and I had a heritage, but they made it very clear as well that they chose to come to the UK for different reasons and that we were British at the same time. And I think that within this debate about whether Britain is full or not, which, by the way, I agree with Douglas emphatically, I don't think it is, and Tulip, Though I do think that we need to talk about making sure that the communities that are in the UK are integrated, both that they feel that they are welcomed in the UK, but also that they choose to integrate themselves. My mother's lived in Newham, where if you walk down the street now as a white British person, you are very much the minority and you feel as though you're the minority. And we need to discuss whether those sorts of things are good or bad and whether we need to bring more integration within our schools. But I don't think we should be necessarily talking about immigration as a good or a bad thing. We've seen recently with the NHS calling for more nurses and the fact that they can get more nurses from abroad. We still have need for immigration and for skills in the UK. There are jobs which white British people or British people in the UK aren't taking. So there's clearly a need that can be met. But at the same time, I don't want us to lose the idea that we need to talk about welcoming people and integrating them.
Okay, thank you very much. I didn't know that. Another person from Newham.
Yeah.
There we go. I'm going to reframe it slightly because, one, because the two of you poo-pooed it, but also because I think what might be helpful is if you say not so much is Britain full, but how much is too much? And when we say how much is too much, Douglas, and just for 10 minutes, I'm going to come to you, but for just 10 minutes I'm going to let the panel maybe chew over this between themselves. What's the criteria of how much is too much? Is it, as you said, perceptional? Or is it, do we get to a point where the figures just say, hang on, overload, we just can't cope? What should we be looking at, and how do you make that decision?
It's obviously not a science, which is one of the reasons why it's actually plucking a figure, as David Cameron seemed to have, as it were, under 100,000 a year net migration, doesn't quite answer it. There is definitely an element of it which I think public services have to come into it, whether public services can provide adequately for everyone, including everyone who's already here. That's obviously a part of it. I think that the identity question is obviously a mellifluous one and obviously a highly problematic one, because as everybody knows, a lot of polls, a lot of data on it suggests, for instance, that a lot of people who live in really very monocultural areas nevertheless perceive immigration as happening quite often at a higher rate than it is actually happening. So there is definitely a problem about how you nail down the perception thing. I would just point this out, is that to my mind, the integration issue, which is just picked up on, is definitely part of this challenge. There has to be in there somewhere. And let me just, if I may, give a quick figure which is which I think is helpful. Quite often people talk about Britain and other European countries, and particularly Britain recently, as a nation of immigrants, which I think is a fallacy I always wish to sort of knock on the head. Because although it's true that immigration has always happened, it's never happened at this kind of speed. And just to give some context for that, quite often people talk about the Huguenot migration into this country, the Huguenot migration in particular, the east end of London. After 1683, around 50,000 Huguenots came to the UK. And this was such a large migration, as I say, not only that we still talk about it, but that it's still given as an example of how integration happened. I mean, it took some centuries, arguably, I think not just decades, for that integration to occur, but that it has. But 50,000 is an average about 6 to 8 weeks of immigration that we've had over the last 15 years, since Tony Blair came to office and since that period. So,
what was it as a proportion of the population then?
Yeah.
Yeah, the proportion.
Sure, but this question of what migration at that rate does, I would argue that the one criteria, as I say, it's not a scientific criteria, but one criteria has to be that issue of, are people coming and being part of the country, or are they coming and having a parallel life and a parallel community that they can do, and maybe not even being aware of the possible life they can have outside of that area. And when that happens, I think there is a problem. And I think it's one that people rightly get concerned about.
So that's not numbers, that's more cultural, and that's more a matter of integration, and more a matter of not how many people are coming, but how are we coping with the people who are coming.
Yes. I mean, I think a lot of people who have lots of concerns about immigration would not be as concerned as they were if integration had happened at a faster and better rate.
Okay. Sarah?
Well, I think we are one of the most integrated countries in the world, and other countries such as, Paris will look to London and say, we want this level of integration. We want this level of integration that they have in the UK, though I completely hear your point that the largest concern often comes from people who do not meet someone from another ethnicity in their daily life. And it's what we all know is true, fear of the unknown. I would say, and integration is the thing that I'm most concerned about. I think it, as I mentioned earlier, it cuts both ways. I think there are communities, and I could say it of my own, who, they come to the UK and then they hanker for the country they left in that time, and they hold it in aspect. And that's not a great thing. At the same time, it's wanting to be more welcomed into the community you come into. And I think that's where we get with this debate about immigration and whether it's good or bad. It makes migrant communities feel unwanted and unwelcome. And we have to be careful whilst talking about numbers, and I honestly don't know what the right number is. I don't think anyone does. But when you talk about numbers, you have to be careful with your rhetoric. You have to be careful with the actual message you're putting out to people and not making them feel like they're unwanted, because that won't help anyone. And that's when you get British-born people who feel that they don't belong to Britain.
Oh, wow. What an interesting conversation. You can tell, based on the fact and based on the points Douglas have stated, I've really learned a lot. We all know Douglas is someone that is very articulated, always sincere and honest. He's ready to say the truth. He's ready to stand by the truth. He's not afraid to say the truth. Just by the title of the debate, is Britain full? Are they actually talking about numbers? Are the people living in Britain, are they overpopulated? But I think, based on the point and the fact that I've stated, it's not about the numbers. It's more about the people coming into the country, coming into Britain. Are they ready to integrate? Because I, for one, I believe every country has its own identity, has its own culture, has its own identity, which I believe the identity of British is rooted in its culture, it's rooted in its tradition, it's rooted in its value system. So I think the major concern is about integration. We all know people coming from different countries into UK, into Britain. I believe they brings economic value to the country. If they are ready to integrate, they can bring a big economic value to the host country, but it becomes a problem. It becomes a challenge when the people are coming in and they are not ready to integrate. They are not ready to socialize. At the end of the day, they end up causing harm to the host country instead of becoming economic value to the host country. We all know Britain as a country promote freedom of speech, promote freedom of expression, promote multiculturalism, whereby people can come from their own country and, come to reside in Britain, and they feel a sense of being at home. They can try to position themselves where they believe that the people from their background, the people from their culture, the people from their country has located themselves in Britain. I see that as something very good. Multiculturalism is very good. But I also believe that people should be ready to integrate. And we can all tell this video is more than 5 years, it's more than 6 years. This is a problem Douglas have always been talking about. Are the people coming into the country, are they ready to integrate? And we can tell that currently right now in Britain, a lot of problem is coming up as a result of people failing to integrate. And I believe if this problem have been addressed, I believe there wouldn't be any issue. Right now, you can see a lot of people in UK, in Britain, promoting terrorism, promoting jihad, promoting Hamas, trying to say they are in support of Hamas, doing what they are not supposed to do. You see a lot of people trying to promote their culture in Britain. Because the other day I was watching a video whereby a Muslim scholar was talking about Sharia law, that he wants Sharia law to be legislated in the UK, that if Sharia law is legislated in the UK, that the UK will become a more safe place, a better place to live as compared to the current law that is in UK right now. He gave example that most of the Muslim and Islam countries that have legislated Sharia law, that there is less crime rate in those countries, that if UK can also legislate Sharia law, that UK will be a better place for immigrants, which I believe that is totally an idiotic ideology. You can't come into a country and try to impose your own culture on the people, impose your own tradition on the people, impose your own value system on the people. I believe that is totally wrong. That is totally wrong. If you are coming into a country, you should be able to adjust yourself in order to be able to integrate with the country's culture, integrate with the country's tradition, integrate with the country's value system, instead of imposing your own culture on the people. And I believe the major problem, just like Douglas and every other speaker have stated in this video, the main problem is the problem of integration. Even currently right now, a lot of debates that Douglas have been participating is majorly about extremists, about fundamentalists, people trying to impose their own culture on the Britain people, which I believe is totally wrong. It's totally wrong. If you are coming into a country as an immigrant, you have to be able to adjust yourself to accommodate the host country culture, to accommodate the host country tradition, to accommodate the host country value system. You don't have to come into a country and try to impose your own culture, your own tradition on the people. Right now, you see a lot of people even trying to demand for compensation and all that, which I believe that is totally wrong. I believe the Britain or the UK, they should set up a policy. They should come up with a better policy in order to be able to manage immigrants effectively, in order to be able to assess those coming into the country, assess the background of those coming into the country, so they can know they are bringing in the right people. Because I see no reason why you come to a country and you are being accommodated, and at the end of the day, you try to impose your own culture, your own belief on the people. I believe that is totally wrong. You should be able to integrate effectively. We all understand that immigrants coming into a country brings a lot of economic value, and at the same time, if not properly managed, and if they are not ready to integrate, they can also cause harm to the host country. I've really learned a lot just by listening to Douglas Murray and every one of the speaker. So I would like to hear your comments on this topic. Is Britain really full? Let's get the conversation rolling. Don't forget, click on the subscribe button, click on the like button. Do have a nice day.
Yeah.